Okay, what's up, guys? So, you've hit Series A. Cool. Are investors asking for a board seat and getting you to start thinking about board composition and reporting now? Well, yay. Look, don't worry, this isn't that complicated, though you can, of course, make pretty much anything complicated. Now, if you want to understand the difference between being a founder and the board of directors, stick with me right now.
Ask Alex. Ask Alex. Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, now you know.
Yeah.
Okay, in startup land, things are kept simple, since you need to be executing. As you get larger, there's a lot of money at stake. Then, no shock, this gets more formal and complicated. You may even start having things like compensation committees, which are a total snooze fest. So let's just deal with the board basics. So let's cover the basic question about how you differentiate between you as a founder and being a director and this whole board of director thing, okay? Now, firstly, there aren't strictly mutually exclusive, right? A founder can be a director and be on the board. In fact, they usually are. So starting out, you as the CEO and the other founder, keeping it to one, are directors. It's going to be the COO or CTO, depending on your labels. Now, why do you want to be a director and be on the board? Okay, being a director is not cool. It means that you are on the hook legally for stuff, especially if you go bankrupt. In many countries, if you go bankrupt, you can't be the director again for a few years, and you may have personal issues getting bank loans, etc. So take it seriously if a friend asks you to be a director. I've certainly said no when it wasn't my own company. But the board makes the big decisions, and you totally want control over the board for as long as you can. So starting out, if you have two directors as founders, and an investor wants a board seat, don't give them a three, okay? You give them one, so you founders have two, and the investor has one. You have control, right? Now at Series A, maybe you give two, and you add an independent board director, which you can do, by the way. Let's make sure you pick them and they have your back. Otherwise, you don't effectively have control anymore. So why? When it comes to making decisions, you want your own way, right? Well, control is one way to have it by having effective control over the number of directors on your board. Okay, so now let's differentiate between a founder and a director. As a founder, you basically founded the company. The implication being you have a lot of common shares. You may give someone the title of founder or co-founder after you start, but that's basically just an ego thing. Like, you can do whatever you want. Founder is not a legal term, and there is no such thing as founder shares, which some people believe, right? Really, actually, even staff think that they want to have founder shares, which is, again, it's totally ridiculous, okay? There's no difference. Now, as a founder, you probably own most of the shares on what's called a fully diluted basis, and therefore have control over the company, but may not necessarily retain control over it in the future. After, many rounds of dilution, yay, right? So even if you don't own the majority of the shares, you can still retain the title of a founder. Now, what about the CEO title? You only have that title in so long as the board agree for you to be the CEO. Yes, you can get fired, and a lot of founders get fired or demoted or given some fancy title over time, maybe something like the president. Okay, this does happen. So in short, you will always be a founder. You may not always be a CEO. Now, board of directors. The board of directors have oversight of a startup and can fire the CEO. In fact, firing the CEO is actually the really only thing that VCs can do to actually retain control of you. It's the only performance lever that they actually have, if they want to mix things up and, because they're not working out well, okay? So being the CEO title has sort of got a little target on your back, right? Now, the founders technically report to the board. So you kind of want to keep them happy and not be dicks, okay? They really do matter. The only way to get rid of directors is by getting a new important investor who kicks the old VCs off and puts themselves there as they've got more experience scaling a company and governance, etc., or something at the stage where you're at. At least that's a logical reason, okay? The board sets the company's strategic objectives and ensures that all necessary resources are in place to meet these objectives and reviews management performance regularly. That's meaning you, okay? Now, as mentioned before, the board can include a founder or founders and likely will for some time, if not till IPO and beyond. You might lose a director seat if the VCs bring in a new CEO like Jack Barker with an idea for the box. Go watch Silicon Valley, it's hilarious. Okay, now there may be many founders, so the CEO is 99.9% a board of director, and the others are maybe depending on the board structure. Okay? Now the other directors are independent third parties, say 2 founders, 2 investors, 1 independent. Typically the investors who lead a deal, but note that sometimes a board observer might actually happen too, and that just means that they're allowed in the room but can't vote. They can speak though, meaning they will talk and also try influence discussions or important things. They may not be able to vote, but they can encourage certain kind of votes to happen, right? This is basically really only going to be okay at, say, Series B+. Otherwise, just never allow it. My mate who heads up a media company's investment arm asked for an observer seat at Series B as default though, okay? But again, this is like later stage stuff. And I think part of the reason is actually they just want to train up their own, more junior staff to actually understand how to interact with the boards. You got to learn somewhere, right? Okay, but hang on. What about public companies? Frankly, this doesn't really matter to you, but let's just touch on it, okay? In publicly listed companies, the majority of board members will be independent non-executive directors. Independent means that they aren't founders, they're not investors, right? Non-executive means that they aren't working at the company full-time. They just turn up for free coffee and bagels every once in a while. Now, the board will meet only a few times a year. For example, 6 to 8 meetings. And they'll decide on high-level matters, for a fat fee, of course, such as structural and constitutional issues, governance, approval of overall strategy, approval of significant transactions, mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures, capital expenditure, blah, 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 blah. All the big stuff, right? You may find that your now public company may even have only 2 executive directors on the board, which is probably like the CEO and the CFO, with all the other members, could be around 8 to 12 people, being non-executives. Now, at this point in time, the board basically thinks they run the company and they delegate all the decisions on the operational running of the company to the CEO, which is a little bit of a mind shift here coming from a founder, right? The CEO is accountable to the board and can delegate any of his powers to other executive officers. Okay, now to conclude, founders start the company, but it's an ego title. It doesn't actually mean anything, okay? You get your board seat so long as you have control and investors want you around. As you get bigger, you get a bigger board and less control. When you get really big, you're sort of an employee. But hey, you're rich now, so who gives a fuck? Now, I hope this is useful to you guys to think about how you want to start and scale your company and some of the formalities with it. If you need some help figuring out if your business model makes sense or not, you can book a one-on-one call with me and I can help you be a little bit less freaked out. Now, if you like these videos, please like, comment, subscribe. It encourages me to kind of make more of these things for you. Okay, guys, bye.